Communication happens in layers. The words you speak, the tone you use, the body language you display. Most people communicate at all three layers consciously, managing each channel to send coherent messages. Then there's a fourth layer, the deepest layer, the layer beneath conscious communication where true intentions live, where actual thoughts hide, where real feelings exist before they're filtered through social acceptability. Most people's fourth layer bleeds through accidentally. Micro-expressions betraying real emotions, verbal slips revealing true thoughts, behavioral inconsistencies exposing hidden agendas. The Sigma male's fourth layer is encrypted. He sends signals at this deepest level that contain meaning, but the meaning is indecipherable to people who don't have the key. These silent signals operate beneath everyone's awareness. They communicate volumes to those who speak the language, but to everyone else, they're invisible. And what makes these signals devastating is that by the time you realize he's been communicating all along, the conversation is already over. The first silent signal is strategic absence. Most people signal interest through presence. They show up. They're available. They make time. The Sigma male signals through calculated absence, not showing up to events where his presence is expected, being unavailable when availability is assumed, carving out time that's visibly protected from others. Most people interpret this absence as disinterest or rudeness. They're missing the signal. His absence isn't random. It's communication. When he's absent from your event but present for someone else's, he's signaling priority hierarchy. When he's unavailable for casual hangouts but available for specific purposes, he's signaling value discrimination. When he protects time from everyone, he's signaling autonomy. These absences aren't failures to communicate. They're precise communications most people can't decode because they're expecting presence-based signals in a system where absence carries meaning. The second silent signal is the strategic pause. In conversations, most people fill every gap. The Sigma male lets gaps exist, but not randomly. He pauses before responding to specific types of statements, pauses after certain questions, pauses when particular topics emerge. These pauses aren't hesitation. They're evaluation time, and the length of the pause communicates his assessment. Short pause means the topic or statement is accepted. Medium pause means he's considering whether to engage. Long pause means he's deciding whether this person is worth the effort of honest response. Most people interpret these pauses as him being slow or thoughtful. They're missing the signal. The pause length is information. It's telling you how he's categorizing the interaction. But if you don't know to measure the pauses, if you're just waiting for him to speak, you're missing real-time feedback about how this conversation is being evaluated. The third signal is eye contact variation. Most people maintain socially appropriate eye contact consistently. The Sigma male varies eye contact based on content and person. Full sustained eye contact for statements he respects or people he values. Minimal eye contact for statements he dismisses or people he's disengaged from. Deliberate eye contact withdrawal at specific moments. These variations aren't social anxiety. They're intentional communication. When he holds eye contact during your story, he's signaling value. When he breaks it during your question, he's signaling the question is low priority. When he maintains it during silence, he's signaling comfort and depth. When he withdraws it during conflict, he's signaling disengagement from the conflict frame. Most people don't track these variations. They're just trying to maintain appropriate eye contact themselves. They're missing a continuous feedback system about how every moment of the interaction is being evaluated. Let me show you the fourth signal. Response calibration. Most people respond to questions with roughly equal effort, regardless of who asks. The Sigma male calibrates response depth to the question quality and the questioner's value. Surface question from casual acquaintance gets minimal response. Deep question from respected person gets extensive response. Same question from two different people gets two radically different response depths. This isn't rudeness, it's signal. He's communicating through differential treatment. If you ask him something and get a 3-word response, while someone else asks him something similar and gets a 10-minute response, he's signaling relative value. He's showing you where you rank. He's teaching you what kind of interaction he's willing to have with you versus others. Most people don't notice the calibration. They're focused on their own question and his response to it. They're not comparing his response patterns across contexts. They're missing the meta-communication happening through differential engagement. The 5th signal is selective vulnerability. Most people are either vulnerable with everyone or guarded with everyone. Consistent emotional boundaries. The Sigma male varies vulnerability by person. He'll share deeply personal information with someone he trusts. Share nothing personal with someone he doesn't. Share specific types of vulnerability with specific people based on what they've earned access to. This isn't manipulation. It's tiered access control. And the tier you're granted access to signals what he thinks of you. If he's sharing fears with her, but only sharing logistics with you, he's signaling different relationship depths. If he's sharing ambitions with one person and daily activities with another, he's signaling different levels of trust. Most people don't notice they're on different tiers. They don't know what he shares with others. They assume the vulnerability he shows them is the vulnerability he shows everyone. They're missing the signal that their tier placement sends about their significance in his world. The 6th signal is energy allocation. Most people distribute energy relatively evenly across their social obligations. The Sigma male allocates energy precisely. Full energy for people and activities that align with his values. Minimum energy for people and activities that don't. Observable energy variation based on who's in the room and what's being discussed. This isn't mood swings. It's priority signaling. When he's animated, discussing one topic, and flat discussing another, he's showing you his interest map. When he's engaged with one person and disengaged with another in the same conversation, he's showing you his respect hierarchy. When he lights up for certain activities and goes through motions for others, he's revealing his authentic priorities. Most people interpret this as him being interested or uninterested in the moment. They're missing the pattern. The pattern is the signal. His energy allocation is a map of his internal value system. But you have to observe across multiple contexts to see the pattern. Most people only see individual moments and miss the systematic communication. Let me take you into the 7th signal. Boundary enforcement consistency. Most people enforce boundaries inconsistently. They say no, but can be convinced. They set limits, but make exceptions. The Sigma male's boundary enforcement is perfectly consistent, but contextual. With person A, certain things are never tolerated. With person B, those same things might be acceptable. This isn't hypocrisy. It's personalized boundary systems. He's developed different relationship protocols for different people based on what they've earned. And the boundaries he enforces with you versus others signal what category you occupy. If he tolerates interruptions from her, but not from you, you're in different categories. If he shares resources freely with one person, but guards them from another, the categories are different. Most people only see their own boundary experiences. They don't know how he treats others. They're missing the signal that their specific boundary regime communicates about their relationship significance. The 8th signal is reciprocity tracking. Most people have fuzzy reciprocity monitoring. They do favors. They help people. They don't track carefully whether it's reciprocated. The Sigma male tracks precisely, not out of pettiness, out of data gathering. He's monitoring who gives and who takes, who reciprocates and who exploits, who maintains balance and who creates imbalance. and his future behavior adjusts based on these patterns. If you've taken 3 times without giving once, his availability will decrease. If you've matched his giving, his investment will increase. This adjustment is the signal. When he becomes less available to you over time, despite nothing obvious changing, he's signaling that reciprocity patterns are unsatisfactory. When he becomes more generous, despite you not asking, he's signaling that reciprocity has earned increased investment. Most people don't notice these gradual adjustments. They're not tracking their own give-take ratios. They're missing real-time feedback about whether the relationship is balanced or exploitative. The 9th signal is topic redirection patterns. Most people redirect conversations randomly based on discomfort or boredom. The Sigma male redirects strategically. He steers away from specific topics with specific people, allows certain topics with certain people, redirects some people constantly while letting others explore freely. This isn't random. It's access control. Topics he redirects you away from are topics he doesn't want to discuss with you specifically. Topics he explores freely with you are topics you've earned access to. If he changes the subject every time you approach personal matters, but discusses them freely with someone else, he's signaling trust levels. If he engages your questions about his work, but redirects questions about his emotions, he's signaling what kind of relationship he's willing to have with you. Most people don't track these patterns. They just follow the conversation. They're missing the communication happening through what he will and won't discuss with them specifically. Let me show you the 10th signal. Physical proximity patterns. Most people maintain socially appropriate distance somewhat consistently. The Sigma male varies proximity meaningfully. He'll be physically closer to people he's comfortable with. Maintain distance from people he's wary of. Adjust distance based on context and conversation content. This distance variation isn't accidental. It's communication. When he steps closer during certain topics and maintains distance during others, he's signaling comfort and discomfort. When he's physically close with some people and maintains distance with you despite similar context, he's signaling different comfort levels. When he adjusts distance during a single conversation, he's providing real-time feedback about the discussion. Most people don't consciously notice these proximity shifts. They're not tracking his spatial relationship to them versus to others. They're missing the constant feedback about comfort, trust, and engagement that physical distance communicates. The 11th signal is future tense language patterns. Most people use future tense casually. We should do this sometime. I'll get back to you on that. Let's stay in touch. The Sigma male uses future tense language strategically. Specific future tense means genuine intent. Vague future tense means polite exit. Present tense language means current priority. Past tense framing means closed chapter. When he says, "I'll call you Tuesday at 3," he means it, and that specificity signals value. When he says, "We should catch up sometime," he means probably never, and that vagueness signals low priority. When he discusses you in present tense versus past tense, he's signaling whether you're currently relevant. Most people take future language at face value. They don't distinguish between specific and vague future commitments. They're missing the signal that specificity equals intent, while vagueness equals avoidance. The 12th signal is emotional mirroring selectivity. Most people mirror emotions somewhat automatically. You're excited, they match excitement. You're sad, they match sympathy. The Sigma male mirrors selectively. He'll match emotions of people he respects, won't match emotions of people he doesn't. Will deliberately not mirror to signal disagreement with the emotional frame. This selective mirroring isn't coldness, it's communication. When you're excited and he doesn't match your energy, he's signaling he doesn't share your assessment of the situation. When you're distressed and he remains calm, he's signaling he doesn't validate the distress. When he does mirror your emotion, he's signaling alignment and support. Most people only notice when he doesn't mirror and interpret it as him being distant or unsupportive. They're missing the signal that selective mirroring is continuous feedback about whether he agrees with your emotional interpretation of events. Here's the 13th signal that operates beneath everything else: response speed variation. Most people respond at relatively consistent speeds to messages, requests, questions. The Sigma male's response speed varies meaningfully. Immediate response to high-priority people and topics. Delayed response to low-priority people and topics. No response to things he's decided don't warrant response. This isn't forgetfulness. It's priority signaling. When you text him and get immediate response while your friend texts him and waits 2 days, he's signaling priority hierarchy. When he responds quickly to some types of messages from you, but slowly to others, he's signaling which types of interaction he values. When he stops responding to certain topics or certain people, he's signaling those have fallen below his response threshold. Most people don't track response speed patterns. They just know he responded or didn't. They're missing the communication embedded in timing. Let me take you into the 14th signal. Information volunteering patterns. Most people volunteer information somewhat randomly. The Sigma male volunteers information strategically. He'll proactively share with people he wants to keep informed. Will wait to be asked by people he's neutral about. Will withhold even when asked from people he doesn't trust. And what he volunteers versus withholds from you specifically signals your trust level and relationship significance. If he volunteers updates about his life to you without prompting, you're trusted. If you have to ask to learn anything, you're acquaintance level. If you ask and still get minimal information, you're outside his trust circle. Most people don't notice what he volunteers versus what they have to extract. They're just getting information or not. They're missing the signal that voluntary disclosure communicates trust and relationship depth. The 15th signal is correction patterns. Most people correct errors when they notice them. The Sigma male corrects selectively. He'll correct people he respects because their accuracy matters to him. Won't correct people he doesn't respect because their accuracy is irrelevant. Will correct on topics he cares about and let errors pass on topics he doesn't. This selective correction is communication. When he corrects your misstatement, he's signaling he cares about your accuracy, which means he values you or the topic. When he lets you remain incorrect, he's signaling either you're not significant enough to invest correction effort or the topic isn't important to him. When he corrects some people in a group but not others on the same error, he's signaling whose accuracy matters. Most people only notice their own correction experiences. They don't see the pattern. They're missing the signal that correction equals investment, and lack of correction equals indifference. Here's the 16th and perhaps most devastating signal, the exit signal. When he's decided a relationship or interaction is complete, he signals before he acts. Increased formality, decreased vulnerability, more surface-level engagement, faster exits from interactions, less initiation of contact. These aren't gradual drifts. They're systematic dismantling. He's signaling the end before the end, giving you data about what's coming. Most people notice something feels different, but can't identify what. They sense distance, but attribute it to stress or circumstances. They're missing the signal that he's already gone, that he's executing the exit protocol, that the relationship, in his mind, is already over, even though he hasn't verbalized it yet. By the time he verbalizes it, he's already processed it completely. The silent signal happened weeks or months before. But if you don't know to watch for systematic engagement reduction, you miss the warning. Now here's why these signals are indecipherable to most people. They require pattern recognition across time and context. Any individual signal moment looks like nothing, seems like random behavior, normal variation. But patterns across dozens or hundreds of interactions create clear communication for those watching systematically. The problem is most people don't watch systematically. They're not tracking his behavior across contexts. They're not comparing how he treats them versus others. They're not logging his patterns over time. They're just experiencing individual moments. And individual moments don't reveal patterns. You need the data set. You need to observe him across 6 months, across 20 situations, across interactions with 10 different people. Then the patterns become obvious. The signals become clear. But most people don't have that observational discipline, so they miss every signal until it's too late to respond to what the signals were communicating. Here's what makes these signals particularly effective as communication tools. They are deniable. If you call him out on any individual signal, he can claim coincidence. I wasn't avoiding you, I was just busy. I didn't respond slowly to you specifically, I'm just slow to respond generally. I'm not less engaged with you, I'm just tired lately. Any individual instance is explainable, but the pattern isn't coincidence. The pattern is intentional communication that he can deny if challenged while continuing to send. This deniability creates asymmetric information warfare. He's communicating clearly to those literate in his signal language, while maintaining plausible deniability to those who aren't. And this allows him to communicate truth while preserving social comfort, to send clear messages while avoiding confrontation, to phase people out while maintaining surface politeness. Let me show you why he uses these silent signals instead of direct communication. Direct communication invites negotiation. If he tells you directly that you're low priority, you'll argue, you'll convince, you'll try to change his assessment. Silent signals don't invite negotiation. They just are. They communicate without opening debate. They inform without creating confrontation. They let him operate according to his actual assessments while avoiding the social friction direct honesty would create. It's not cowardice. It's efficiency. Why have 17 conversations explaining why he's decreasing investment in someone when he can just decrease investment and let the pattern communicate? Why explicitly categorize people when he can just treat them according to their category and let them figure it out or not? Here's the final truth about these silent signals. They're not meant to be decoded by everyone. They're screening mechanisms. People who pay attention, who observe patterns, who notice behavioral inconsistencies, who track his treatment variations, these people decode the signals. And decoding the signals proves they have observational capacity and attentional discipline he values. People who don't decode the signals, who don't notice they're being systematically deprioritized or elevated, who don't track his behavioral patterns, these people have failed the observational test. And failing the test is itself information. It tells him they're not paying close enough attention to merit deeper access. So the signals serve dual purpose. They communicate to those capable of receiving communication, and they identify who's capable through who receives it. The silent signals Sigma males use are indecipherable only to those not paying attention. To those observing systematically, tracking patterns, comparing contexts, and monitoring consistency, the signals are clear as verbal communication. Clearer, actually, because silent signals are more honest than words. Words can lie. Behavior patterns can't. Words can be strategic. Consistent behavior reveals actual priorities. The Sigma male isn't hiding his truth. He's just encoding it. And the encoding filters for people perceptive enough to decode it. Everyone else gets the social performance, the polite exterior, the acceptable face. But they never get the real communication. Never understand what's actually being said. Never know where they stand. Because standing requires reading signals. And they never learned to read what was being written in silence, in pauses, in energy shifts, in proximity variations, in all the spaces between words where truth lives unfiltered. That's why nobody can decode the silent signals Sigma males use. Not because the signals are impossibly subtle, but because decoding requires systematic observation most people never conduct, requires tracking patterns over time, requires comparing treatment across people and contexts, requires noticing not just what happens, but what doesn't happen, requires measuring pauses, tracking distances, monitoring energy, logging responses, and most people are too busy performing their own social role to observe anyone else's patterns with that level of detail. So the signals remain invisible, not because they're hidden, because nobody's looking with sufficient attention to see what's been in plain sight all along.